Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So, okay, well, sorry for the interruption due to because of technical reasons. So, okay, let me continue my discussion. As we just noted that this measurement aspect of sustainable development is due to because of the poor proxies earlier we have used, poor indicators earlier we have used to represent the growth or the development of an economy. So because of that reason, say the institutions, the researchers were say identified and developed some methods or the measurement techniques to measure the development, which includes say other than the income aspect for the development. I hope all the previous sessions are some of the previous sessions are probably have discussed about this. So hence, so in 1992, the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, which was taking place in Rio de Janeiro, underlined the limitations of the gross domestic product as a measure of sustainable development of a country. So from that and onwards, so the common indicators which are say represent the sustainable development were identified, and based on that some measures of sustainable development was developed. The common indicators such as gross domestic product and as a measure of different resources or pollution flows do not assess the sustainability of economic system. What earlier the economist or the researcher was done that, so they just taken separately the income of a nation or separately the different resources endowed by a nation or the flows of the pollution, and they are assessed all these independently, isolatedly, by not making commonalities, not making synergies. So hence, just by taking these indicators or these measures independently or individually, say we are not able to say come to inference or conclusion whether the economy is sustainable or not, whether a particular sector is sustainable or not. So because of these reasons, the sustainable development indicators is say needed and must be constructed. So in order to form a useful basis for decision making, because the countries and the international institutions use money for the development, and so to spend money for any project, to spend or to make investment in any project, a decision is required. So to make such a wise decision, appropriate decisions related to the status of the development, so the information is needed, the measurement is needed. For example, so if the information which we have in terms of GDP or in terms of any other earlier measurement, so based on that, if the money is spent, probably since it is a poor measure of or an indicator of the development, so that money might not be properly achieve its goal, or the country or the economy is not able to reach the objectives or the goals it has earlier to are setted goals. So because of these reasons, that means to make the wise decisions, proper decisions, so a particular indicator which represent all aspect of the economy is or the development is required. Due to because of this, the sustainable development indicators were identified and some measures of sustainable development were proposed by the economist. So from the 1990s, as earlier we have noted, that the measure aiming at completing the GDP and limiting its supremacy have been built. So from 1990 onwards, we are all noted that the limitations of the GDP was identified and the alternative measures of development were taken from 1990 onwards. And there is a widespread understanding that the society need a better statistical compass to shift emphasis from measuring economic phenomena to measuring sustainable development. So earlier measures were just consider the economic phenomenon. So national income or GDP or GNP or NNP are the majority of the measurements which were used before 1990s were only taken into account the economic aspects, economic issues or the economic related phenomena. So hence the shift was from these economic phenomenon to the sustainable development, which is a more broader compared to the earlier methods of measuring the development of economy. The later concept, that is the sustainable development, entails making choices between using resources to maximize the current well-being or perceiving resources for future use, or between maximizing the human well-being of one country at the expense of the others. So these things were not included in the earlier methods of measurement of the development. So because of these reasons, the sustainable development, okay, that includes all these aspects, and one of the most important, the broad aim of the sustainable development is to measure the well-being of the people, instead of measuring only the development in monetary terms, development in only physical terms. It also include all social, economic, environmental, ecological aspects. So by taking all those aspects, by using this sustainable development, the human well-being can be measured, and which is represented by the sustainable development. So in addition to the prevalent macroeconomic indicators such as the GDP, the sustainable development indicators pay due attention to current human well-being, including its distribution across and within countries, as well as to the intergenerational aspect of human well-being. So if we get into the literature related to this sustainable development, say the theorist identified the indicators or the phenomena or the concepts into three things. The one is the now. The next one is now and later, and the third one is elsewhere. So the now is related to the current aspects, that is the development in the current period, and in the itself the definition of that sustainable development, there we were noted that is the comparison of the needs of the current people with the future generations. So that's why any development or the measurement of any development or an indicator or a method to measure the development should taken into account, or that should include the indicators which should include the aspects or the issues related to the current, related to the future, and also related to the impact of that any economic activity or the human activity elsewhere other than that particular state or the region or the other country in general. So that's why the theorists or the researchers so divided the indicators, divided the human activities and the effect of the human activities, that is in current, now, then now and later, then now and elsewhere. So all these things are included in this sustainable development related methods of measurement, and also identifying the indicators related to this sustainable development. Earlier, these phenomena were not included in case of GDP or any other method of measuring development before 1990s. So then the concept of sustainable development focuses, among other things, on the depletion of the natural resources, climate change, and other factors that affect society in the long run. So these are the things already, I hope, introduced by the previous the resource persons. Then why we should have to measure the sustainable development, and because of this, okay, the need for the monetization. So that means that is the need for monetization means all, though of course under this sustainable development, there are several indicators have been identified to compute an index or to compute or to measure that in a numerical form. The monetization is required. That means convert that particular indicator into a monetary term. That is one of the practical difficulty, empirical difficulty that has been facing by the persons who are proposing indicators and are conceptualizing an indicator and providing a thematical background for that particular indicator and operization of that indicator. So in such operization of indicators, so the monetization is needed. So hence theoretically and also practically, the development of a method of measuring in an indicator is so difficult. So the last 2 decades have been used proliferation of the methods and indicators to measure sustainable development. So if you get into the literature, so in sometimes we might have confused related to the methods we should have to select, the indicators we should have to select for measurement of this sustainable development. So that's why there are use indicators proposed by different institutions, international institutions, including UNO and others, and also by the individual researchers. The many composite indicators have been proposed in the academic literature, while many institutes have adapted a set of sustainable development indicators to track progress towards sustainable society. While these initiatives have helped to put sustainable development on the agenda of national and international institutions, and the difference between the approaches remain large. So just as I have told you that there are many institutions, many researchers, they have identified large number of indicators. And also from this, of course, today, if you are talking about development, so probably it implies sustainable development. So it is, the development is not just for our own, that is just for economics people. So if you say that development, of course, that involves all the disciplines, because as of course it is, development is a transdisciplinary subject. The sustainable development is a transdisciplinary subject, multidisciplinary subject. So hence if you talk today anything about development, it is implies a sustainable development. A conceptual framework is needed to harmonize the different ways in which sustainable development has been measured. That's why just I have told you that the harmonization is needed, the synchronization is needed, because the different institutions, different researchers, they have identified different indicators, and these indicators has to be grouped, has to be classified based on some broad categories, broad areas. So and within that, so by using that particular indicator, we have to identify an index for that. So that index has to be aggregated. So in case of that aggregated, we should have to identify the commonalities. We should have to identify the commonalities by standardizing it. Otherwise, because the many of the indicators which have been used to represent sustainable development are not having commonalities. That's why as a person who proposing an indicator and measure particular for that particular indicator by using facts, that should be comparable. When comparable is possible, when the standardization is made. If the standardization is not made, so then the comparison is not possible. So because of these reasons, so the measuring sustainable development is so difficult. So hence there is an harmonization is required. So then the framework aim to this is to set a currently proposed national international statistical organization, formulate a list of potential indicators to conceptual framework. That's why if you get into the literature, first there is a conceptual framework. After that conceptual framework, there are theoretical coordinations. After that theoretical coordinations, so then they are implemented. That means those are used to measure anything, not just in sustainable development, measuring any aspect. That is also holds good in case of the sustainable development. As such, The framework could facilitate the comparison and harmonization of the existing sustainable development index sets. A distinction is made between three conceptual dimensions of the human well-being, that is human well-being of the present generation in the one particular country, that is referred to as here and now, as earlier I have told you that. Then well-being of the future generations, that is later, and the well-being of the people living in other countries. So that's why all the indicators which are used to measure the sustainable development can be broadly classified, categorized, grouped based on this, or a person who intend to measure that this sustainable development has to identify the phenomena or the concepts and converted it to indicators based on this, that is here and now, later, and elsewhere. Here and now, that is related to the present conditions, present period. The later is the effect of these human activities on the future period. So then the last, so due to because of globalization, so due to because of the other reasons, so okay, today any activity that has been taken, or the economic activity or any human activity that has been taken place in any country, so that has its implications, effect on the other countries of the world, that also has to be taken into account in calculation of this development or sustainable development. So that's why there are three broad dimensions, conceptual dimensions has been proposed by the researchers related to these sustainable development aspects. So they are called here and now, later, and elsewhere. So based on this here and now, later, and elsewhere, a work by the United Nations related organizations identified and sorted out the many aspects of sustainable development into a 20 themes, or a 20 distinguished themes covering environmental, social, and economic aspects of sustainable development. Of course, already you have noted about that the sustainable development, or the area, or the dimension that has been included in sustainable development, are this social, environmental, and economic aspect. So these 20 themes which has been identified by this UNO are related to these three aspects of sustainable development. They are subjective well-being, consumption and income, nutrition, health, housing, education, and so on. So these are the major themes, are the aspects which comes under that broad category of environmental, social, and economic aspects. So by making use of these 20 themes, according to them, the sustainable development can be estimated, sustainable development can be measured, or whether a country is progressing towards their aim in these themes, or based on these themes. Finally, they are of course converted into the indicators by using some specific methodology. Say this methodology, that is the methodology developed by UN related institutions. They have both theoretical and practical aspects. So that is how these 20 themes have been identified. These 20 themes have identified by the UNO based on few aspects, based on few themes. The first one is based on the definition given by the Brundtland Commission for the Sustainable Development. That is, to prepare these themes, these 20 themes are to measure the sustainable development. They have first taken out the definition given by the Brundtland Commission. That is, sustainable is a development which meets the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs. So hence they are taking into account, and they have constructed that 20 themes. It aims at assuring the ongoing productivity of exploitable natural resources and the conversing all the species of the fauna and flora, the two key ideas are expressed in these definitions are the concern for the well-being of the future generation, and the recognition of the bidirectional impact between economic activity and the state of environment and natural resources. If you just observe that particular definition, so we can have two ideas here. The two ideas are the one concern of the definition is related to the well-being of the future generation, and the second one is related to a bidirectional. That is the direction of the relationship. So earlier, of course, we have taken to measure the development is a unidirectional. Unidirectional means, so we have just taken the amounts of resources, including physical, natural resources, which have been used earlier to produce. For example, if you take a production function, in that production function, only the inputs are identified, and by making use of the different quantities of the input and how much output is generated, and that is converted into a monetary term, and that becomes the income of a nation, and we consider that as an indicator for development. But whereas in case of this sustainable development definition of say the Brundtland Commission, so that not only taken into account that unidirectional relations, earlier it was used, it is a bidirectional, because any economic activity so that has been taken place in any economy for production of goods and services, so it has a bidirectional relationship with environment and natural resources. By making use of this definition, the themes are identified by the UN institutions. So then the second aspect which has been based for the framework developed by the institution is the economic theory with additional insights from social sciences. Because earlier, when the indicators for development was proposed and developed by economists, so they were taken into account only economic aspects. But now, and because of these UNO related institutions, along with, though we use economic theory, along with economic theory, so the social sciences insight should be included in that. So otherwise, an indicator or a measurement which has been used for measuring development or sustainable development is not complete in all respect. So because of that, along with economic theory, the additional social sciences have also been taken into account. That is the second aspect which has been considered by the institutions to measure sustainable development. So then the next one is, it was based on the suggestions given by the report of Stiglitz and Fritozzi and other international initiations. So these three economists, they have gave an important impetus to the issue of measuring sustainable development. The framework developed by this task force stays close to the recommendations made by Stiglitz and others. And the work by the European Commission also taken into account related to the international organizations in measuring sustainable development, and also the other groups which have been constituted by the different countries. So their opinions are also taken into account by the UN organization. So in specifying the themes and also the indicators for measuring sustainable development. Then the one more aspect in framing this measurement of the sustainable development is the conceptual framework allows for a pragmatic approach in developing an SDI set. The selection of the themes and indicators is based on in-depth analysis of sustainable development themes and indicators currently used in several national, international data set. That's why earlier I have told you that the first a concept has to be developed, and that concept has to be theorized. And once it is theorized, so then any indicators has to be identified. So based on that indicators, the facts or the data has to be collected, gathered, and we should have to estimate that, and finally that becomes the numerical values which represent that particular theme. So that's why in developing the concepts, in selection of the themes, in selection of the indicators, the UN organizations have taken into account. So the task force appointed by the UN or any other the international institutions to make it as more general in nature. That means commonalities. That is an indicator which should be applicable everywhere, and also anywhere. So we cannot have a particular indicator for India itself, or for a neighboring country, or for a particular region within India. That's why. So the commonalities are required. These commonalities are developed by the UN related institutions by taking into account the recommendations of the various reports related to measurement of sustainable development. And as just we were noted that the elsewhere effect. So that elsewhere effect is the transboundary impact. This transboundary impact also has to be included because of after 1980s in general at the world level, 90s onwards in case of Indian context, okay, there is an increasing trend has been observed in the globalization, and the relationship between the countries are becoming more and more important because of that. An important conclusion is that related to the SDA sets should reflect the transboundary impact of the sustainable development by highlighting how a country in the pursuit of the well-being of its citizens may affect the well-being of citizens of the other country. So though a particular country has an objective to increase the well-being of its own people, but that should not be at the cost of the other citizens or the citizens of the other country. So that also should be included in calculation of development or in estimation of development. So this is about just a discussion, a background related to what should be considered, what aspects should be involved, okay, included in construction of sustainable development measurement or methods to measure the sustainable development. Okay, and there is no any single unique method of measurement, as of course we all noted. So that's why there is a study or an institution or a country cannot provide a unique measure because of the complexities just we were noted, and probably you have noted from all the previous sessions. So because of earlier only the GDP was used, it was considered as a unique measure because there was no complexities in calculation because it was objectively stated, objectively measured. But the development, even the development cannot be stated objectively and measured objectively. So because there is a different opinions among the economists, among the sociologists, among the development economists. So because of these reasons, all aspect has to be included in measurement of the sustainable development. That's why there is no any hard and fast rule, or there is no any single hard and fast rule. There is no any unique method of measuring sustainable development. So hence we have say tens of methods of measuring sustainable development. So these are the issues which have to be considered in estimation or proposing a method of measurement of sustainable development. So in this context, the sustainable development takes into account human development in terms of welfare and sustainability of development in terms of the conditions on the stock of capital. So that's why, so the points thus far we were discussed can be summarized now into, based on our previous discussion, into, so in calculation or in framing a methodology for estimation of the sustainable development. Okay, one is the human development. The other one is sustainability. The human development is related to the welfare of the human being, and that is the aspects of the sustainable development, indicators of the sustainable development, and the methods to estimate sustainable development should include the welfare of the people. That is human development. The next aspect is sustainability of such development. So this sustainability of development should be included in measurement of the sustainable development. So it is related to the condition of the stock of capital, that is economic capital, physical capital, natural capital, social capital, and so on. So earlier, of course, before coining this word and using this sustainable development, only economic capital was being considered in estimation of the development. But along with economic capital, all these capitals has to be taken into account in calculation of sustainable development. So hence, with this broad definition, within this broad definition, that is in a method of estimation of sustainable development, okay, has to be taken into account the human development and sustainability of that human development. So that is the broader definition now we can give, or based on that the reports of the UNO, the two main approaches can be described related to this. Okay, that's the one is weak sustainability, the other one is strong sustainability. So that is whether the sustainability of the development is weak or a nation has a strong sustainability both in human well-being and sustaining the capital in general. So although these two views define development as a non-declining level of well-being for future people, the requirement of sustainability is different. And if you just take into account the weak and sustainable development, or the meaning of these strong and weak sustainability related aspect, the weak sustainability only requires a non-declining combined stock of all capital. So the capital, earlier I have told you that economic capital, natural capital, social capital, physical capital. So these should not be declined. So if they are non-declining, then we can call it as weak sustainability. It is then possible to substitute between the human, man-made and environmental capital. So if it is not non-declinable, so then it is possible to substitute one for the other. So in this approach, natural capital is not different from other resources. According to this, so natural capital is also treated as the capital equivalent to other resources, and the aim is to keep the stock of the total capital constant or increasing, whatever the combination of the three types of capital are. So the aim of this weak sustainability related measurement is to keep the capital stock at least constant that should not decline, or a progressive one is that can expected to increase. That is the meaning of weak sustainability. Then on the contrary to this, the strong sustainability gives an essential position to the natural capital. That is more importance to the natural capital. It is a different form of capital without which human life cannot exist. That's why without this natural capital, human life cannot exist. So the strong sustainability requires the maintenance of the environmental functions and critical natural capital needed for the life of ecosystem. So hence, if you include that natural capital and given importance to the natural capital, okay, in measurement of the sustainable development, so then it is called as the strong sustainability. Then, so the contrary to weak sustainability that focuses on maintaining the combined stock of capital intact, the strong sustainability deal with specific environmental functions that are not to be undermined by economic activity and possible ecological limits to growth. So that's why, so all types of growth, or the growth in sustainable development can be broadly divided, or we can classify whether the economy or a particular country is as weak sustainability or a strong sustainability. There are works related to this. So they have classified the countries and also classified the indicators related to that particular into weakly sustainable and strongly sustainable. So this is one of the approach that has been developed by UN-related organizations to measure sustainable development. So then in this context, an indicator of sustainable development must assess the human development, as we already noted that, and the sustainability, and of course, they are called as the weak sustainability and strong strong sustainability. However, no single measure does a perfect job at reflecting the sustainable development per se, as all of us know. Therefore, it is necessary to look at different indicators of development and sustainability to give a better valuation of sustainable development of a country. That's why to look into a particular country and observe and estimate the sustainable development related aspect of a particular country, we should have to look into different indicators. That's why there is no single indicator to represent this sustainable development. This is just a background to this sustainable development and what aspects should be taken into account, consider in measuring sustainable development. So with this background, now I will take some important indicators, important methods, measurement methods followed in literature to measure the sustainable development. And many of these, at least we have heard this, and also we have studied this in the literature. Let me take those methods of measuring sustainability one by one. And broadly, these methods of measuring sustainable development, based on our previous discussion, classified as the measures of sustainability and the measures of human well-being, measures of. That's why the researchers have identified some measures to measure the sustainability and some indicators to measure human well-being. The first part of this discussion is related to measures of sustainability. The next few indicators are related to measures of human well-being. The first among the measures of sustainability is the green national net product. That is green NNP, green GDP. So green GNP, we are so familiar with that. So that is considered as the one of the measures of sustainable development related to sustainability aspect. And here this discussion, as earlier we have noted, or based on the title of our discussion, is related to providing a theoretical justification or thematical substantiation for use of this indicator as a measure of sustainable development in general, and the measure of sustainability in particular. Then the practical problems means the limitations which we will face if we use, or whether it is really broader in the sense which represent all the aspects of sustainable development. They are the empirical issues, are the limitations. So hence, for each measure of this, we will have a discussion related to a theoretical justification for this particular measure as a method of measuring sustainability, then its empirical issues. So the gross national product is the traditional measure. We need not get into this, as broadly noted that, but it has several limitations. Also, we have noted that. So hence, so because of that limitations of either in GDP, GNP or NNP, okay, the researchers have proposed an alternative method to measuring the sustainability of the economy by using this, that is called as the green national net product. So how, of course, we can obtain that? Just by subtracting the depreciation of the physical capital from GNP, and then many adjustments are necessary to obtain this green NNP. So we need not get into that methodology of here. So hence the first method to measure the sustainability is the green NNP. So these modifications are derived from a neoclassical model of growth. So why or how we can use this green NNP as one of the indicator, one of the measure of sustainability? We have a theoretical background. That theoretical background might be observed in neoclassical model of growth with a constant rate of discount are linked to specific environmental variables. So like exhaustible resources, renewable resources, pollution flows, discoveries, and so on. So based on that, this theoretically, or the theoretical justification for this green NNP is found in neoclassical model of economic growth. And note that there is not a consensus among the economists concerning the reason for those modifications and on the techniques used to compute them. So that is, as we already noted, that to use GNP, we should have to add something, we should have to subtract something, something has to be deleted from the earlier method of accounting. And regarding this, there is no unanimity among the economists, what should be included, what should be deleted, and always there is such debate is there related to measures, not just related to this GNNP. Another point of disagreement related to this GNNP or the green measure is, according to some authors like Solo and others, okay, the green NNP is a measure of Ixian income. That is, it represents the maximum amount of possible consumption during a period, does not reduce the possibility of the future consumption. So that's why these concept of sustaining, whether in production, whether in consumption, is not new. So we have also have these concepts in our earlier literature. So we have a concept called Ixian income. So that Ixian income is related to that. So in this context, if GNNP is rising and superior or equal to the current consumption, the studied economy will be sustainable. Then how to interpret this? So this is, so if the GNNP is rising or superior or equal to the current consumption, so we can say that the economy will be sustainable. But note that an increase of GNNP means that the maximum level of sustainable consumption is improving. Okay, this is according to Handley and others. On the contrary, a falling in GNP, okay, is a sign of unsustainability in the sense that the maximum amount that can be consumed without undermining productive capacity is deteriorating. So that's why we can make use this as one of the indicator, but there is also some limitations in using this GNP as that. Then the another limitation of this is the ability of the GNP to be an indicator of weak sustainability, because we are here discussing about a method to measure, to identify the weak and strong sustainability. So hence it has some limitations related to represent it as the method or an indicator of weak sustainability. That is by other authors, some authors like Hansiam and others. According to them, an instantaneous measure of GNNP does not indicate if a country is on a path of sustainable growth. The entire time path of NNP must be assessed. That's why we cannot just taking 1 or 2 years or only a cross-sectional point in time analysis to represent this. So we should have to observe a path of growth or growth of this GNNP to identify whether really it is instantaneous, continuous increase in this indicator or not. This is the opinion of some economists. So even if the prices used were the optimal prices resulting from the theoretical model, but this would not mean that the GNNP is a measure of the Ixian income, because sustainability is not an efficient problem, but rather than an equity one. Of course, from the discussions already we have noted that in case of the earlier methods, before using the sustainable development as an indicator for development, all other earlier methods of growth or development were related to only efficiency. Means, so whether there is an increase in that particular indicator has been observed or not. So it is increased due to because of increase in use efficiency of the resources, whether it is physical or natural. So that's why all the earlier methods of development, measuring methods were given importance to only, or they are included only efficiency concept. But sustainable development is not just taken into account only efficiency aspect, but it is equivalently given importance to equity. This is another important, of course, distinction we should have to have bear in our mind related to the earlier methods of measurement, or simply the development and sustainable development. So that's why if you just take GNNP as one of the as a method of measuring sustainable development, but this GNNP taken into account only efficiency aspect, but not equity one. That is another important limitation as for this GNNP as a method to measure that. So like this, so this GNNP as proposed as one of the indicators of measuring sustainable development, but we should have to use and interpret the results of this GNNP very courteously when we using it for measuring sustainable development. So this is the first one. And the second method of measuring sustainable development is genuine savings. Say genuine savings. And another important point also we should have to bear in our mind, as we have noted in our previous discussions related to the development of the themes, indicators for sustainable development. Though theoretically we are able to identify a comprehensive thematical indicators for development of human development, but whether the data is available for computation of that is another most important thing which we should have to bear in our mind. So though theoretically it is strong, if practically it is not operational, means if the data are not available for that, then we are not able to compute that. So that's why we should also take into account that point in our mind, in why, of course, theoretically we have several such concepts, phenomenons, theorizations related to sustainable development, but why we are not able to represent them numerically because of these reasons. There is one table at the end. I will show you the availability of the data for computation of these indicators developed by the UN and other organizations. So in majority of the cases, the data are the facts which are available at the national level. So for some indicators, it is only 50%. Some indicators, it is ranges from 50 to 70 like that. So that's why, so we should also care about those availability of the data or information. So the second, the theoretical justification for use of this genuine savings as one of the indicator is that, so the theoretical justification stems from a maximization of a social welfare function related model discounted at a constant rate under hypothesis of constant population and perfect substitution between all kinds of capital. Okay, so this is a theoretical justification, and within this framework, it can be shown that the economy is unsustainable if its genuine saving is inferior to zero. And GS is an extension of the Hartwig rule, that is, an economy is sustainable if the savings are superior to the aggregated depreciation of the human, man-made and natural capital. And based on the following operational specifications, the World Bank has computed, of course, the genuine savings for 140 countries in 2004. So that's why the how this genuine saving has to be interpreted. So whether there is any improvement in genuine saving due to because of that increase or improvement in genuine saving, how to correlate, link that improvement or increase in genuine saving with sustainable development. So that's why if any value of this GS is inferior to zero, that is unsustainable. That is, if it is less than that zero, that is, zero is standardized. So if there is any zero, means there is a negative genuine savings. So if the genuine savings are negative, then the economy is unsustainable. So if it is positive, then it is sustainable. And another important limitations, of course, that has been learned from these methods of measuring sustainable development and indicators and so on, is that there is no any threshold level that has given by, that is, the economy is reached a sustainable development. Economy is not yet reached sustainable development, and an economy is not at all reached sustainable development. So to make these types of analysis, so we of course, for this purpose, we need a threshold level. So for example, so that is 0.8 is enough, 0.9 is enough, or 0.4 is enough. So there is no unanimity regarding this kind of threshold level in sustainable development related discussions. So we should also bear that point in our mind in interpreting the results of any for these methods of measuring sustainable development. And the formula which has been used by the World Bank to calculate the genuine savings is given here. That is the genuine savings is equal to gross national savings and so on. So I don't want to get into that. So, okay. So that's why by using this formula, it has been computed, estimated by the countries, and also the World Bank, according to that reports of the World Bank in 2005, that shows that the OECD countries as well as the East and South Asia never had negative GS during the period of 20 years, 1980 to 2020, whereas many African nations and Middle East had a negative value of this indicator during this sample period. So that's why now based on this genuine savings, the sustainability or this sustainable development has been identified. So in case of African countries and the Middle East countries, it has shown a negative value, which means those countries are unsustainable, whereas the other countries are sustainable. Therefore, according to this GS, genuine saving as a measure of sustainable development, most developing countries depend on natural resources exploitation are unsustainable, whereas the results for developed nations do not indicate unsustainability. So this is the reason why the developing countries, those countries are unsustainable in terms of this GS. It is due to because say most of these countries they have a path of growth depends upon exploiting the resources, natural resources, mostly the African countries. So because of that reason, so they are unsustainable, whereas the developed countries are not unsustainable. So this is about the second method, and also of course it has limitations. So since paucity of the time, of course we skip that. Okay. So and related to, there are 3 or 4 such limitations. That is the efficient, therefore the prices used in this. Okay, even in case of the earlier GNNP, here also the price comes here because there is no any specific price, an optimal price that has been identified by these proponents of these methods. So because whether we should have to take because it has to be commonized, we should have to be synthesized, so that synthesis is not possible. So we have to include that prices, whether it is wholesale price, consumer price, or retail price, or how we should have to combine the prices of all the things, prices of goods, prices of services, or prices of materials, and prices of so many things. So there are also the limitations in case of constructing this GS also. Okay, this is related to the second measure, and the third one is related to the a physical indicator that is related to ecological footprint, like our CO2 footprint. The ecological footprint has been calculated. That ecological footprint can be used as a method of measuring sustainability or sustainable development in general. The theoretical background for this method to use as a method of measuring sustainability of an economy was first proposed by and also developed by Rees and the Weckernagel in 1994 and the Weckernagel and Rees in 1996. And its objective is to translate all the ecological impacts of human activity into the area required to produce the resources consumed and to assimilate the waste generated under the predominant management and production practices in any given year. This is the definition given by NUAC in calculation of the ecological footprints. That is, all the things related to this has to translate. That is, any economic activity that has been happened, that affects on ecology. So these should be translated into a area in terms of land, land. Okay, so by converting the impact of these human activities on the ecology in terms of the area or in terms of the land is used as an indicator of ecological footprint. So that is a theory, that is, or a theoretical background, thematic background for use of this ecological footprint. The ecological footprint is a physical indicator of sustainability expressed in land unit. Just I have told you that it compares human consumption of natural resources with the planet Earth's ecological capacity to regenerate them and absorb the corresponding wastage. So what phenomena, what concepts are included in calculation or estimation of this ecological footprint? So it is just comparing the consumption of the natural resources by the human activities with the planet Earth's ecological capacity. So if these one and the two, if they are equal, then it is sustainable. So if the planet Earth's ecological capacity is less than what the human beings are consuming, then it is unsustainable. So that's why by providing a theoretical background for this in recent years, this ecological footprint is also used as a method of measuring sustainability, and it is considered as a physical measure of sustainability. And just we have noted the definition of this, we need not get into this. In other words, economic activity responsible for ecological footprint is unsustainable. So that is empirically energy, food and timber consumption per capita are transformed in terms of the land area needed to produce these amounts. The sum is then compared with the amount of available productive land area per capita. This is a methodology that is called as operationalization. As earlier I have told you that the one is concept. Concept is ecological footprint. Then the next one is thematical justification. That is the definition given. Okay. After that, how to operationalize this, how to measure that. So of course, this para provides how to measure that ecological footprint by using the phenomena like this. Okay. And it also have some limitations. Of course, the few limitations. The first one related to this ecological footprint construction is that the problematic because the heterogeneous data are transformed into land units. Because earlier we have noted that all the things which have been used under this method of calculation should be converted in land units. The data are heterogeneous. That's why when there is an heterogeneity, the reliability, the preciseness is very poor, very less. So that is the first limitation. The second one is ecological footprint can be seen as an indicator of weak sustainability, whereas proponents present it as a measure of strong sustainability. So this is a debate between the proponents and the opponents of this particular method of measuring sustainability. Although this indicator focuses on environmental constraint on the development, it does not include irreversibility and the threshold effects. Earlier I have told you that. So that's why these are the few limitations even for this, the third measure of sustainable development. So the same, of course, is also related to that, some of other limitations. The one more method of measuring the sustainable development is, that is GPI and ISEW. These two measures, that is GPI is Genuine Progress Indicator, and the ISEW is indicator of sustainable economic welfare. So these two measures are attempted by a few persons, okay, that is integrating not only ecological but also social and political variables. Okay, so that means, whereas if you take the earlier methods like genuine savings or GNNP, they are taken into account only economic aspects. But whereas if you take the ecological footprints, that only take the ecological related phenomena in measuring sustainable development. But some authors, they include both these to integrate both economic aspects with social and political aspects. So by integrating, synthesizing economic and political aspects with the economic, along with this ecological and economic aspects, they have proposed two methods of measuring sustainability. They are these two. that is the GNI in progress indicator and the indicator of sustainable economic welfare. From personal consumption expenditure adjusted for income inequality, the general idea is to add contribution to welfare or sustainability is one of the reasons that they have given for this construction. That is, they have taken into account the personal consumption expenditure, which is adjusted for income inequality. And the general idea is to add contribution to welfare. That is, also the welfare aspect has been used in this case. And the differences in the indicators of sustainable economic welfare and the GNI in progress indicator, that is GPR, due to the revision of the methods of computation and the concern, the treatment of public and private defensive expenditure on health and education, and also the incorporation of the cost of the welfare losses. That is the loss of leisure time, the loss of employment, that is underemployment. So all these have been included in computation of these two methods of measuring sustainability. And note that both of these two is not strictly an indicator of sustainable economic welfare, since the incorporation of the cost of environmental degradation is not sufficient to indicate sustainability. Otherwise, in this context, a rise of these. Hello. Please. Means that national economic welfare is improving. Therefore, the policy recommendation is to ensure that the indexes are not decreasing. The estimates of these two show indicators during the last 20 to 30 years, unlike rising GNP. So these opposite trends support the threshold hypothesis. There is a point behind which economic growth does not improve economic welfare, but deteriorate it. So that's why there are, as earlier we have noted, there are some limitations for using this. Okay, calculation of the task one, and this is the fourth measure. These are the fourth measures of sustainable development.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so this is about measures of sustainable development. Okay, so the last three
good
measures. Hello.
Ravindra Kumar sir idru.
Hello, Prem.
Okay, aitu madi.
Prem. Okay. Okay, friends. The next part of our discussion is related to the human well-being. Yes, earlier I have told you that I have started with the methods of measurement related to sustainable development in general. They are broadly classified into sustainability measures and human well-being measures. All the earlier measures thus far we were noted or discussed in brief are related to sustainability. The next part or this part is related to the human well-being. The method to measure human well-being, that is one of the component of sustainable development. We are all familiar with the human development index. Whether that human development index is sustainable or not, so we should have to think over that, and how we can link, how we can incorporate that estimated values of the human development and consider it as a part of that sustainable development. And of course, why and how we can use that human development as a part of, with some modifications, as a measure of well-being of human being, and also a measure of a sustainable development. These are the questions that arises in our mind, because we can make use this human development with some modifications as a method of measuring human well-being, and that has also as of this sustainable development, because the one of the indicator of that is human development is income. Okay, since the income is used one of the component which is given a equal weight with the other two components like health and education related components. So that's why we should have to make modifications to that HDI by including these concepts of sustainability into it. That's why we have phenomenons, or we have indices related to sustainable development like Sustainable Human Development Index. So now, of course, we have here a concept or a method of measuring sustainable development or sustainable well-being of the people, human being, by saying or by using or greening human development or a green extension of this human development indicator. The theoretical justification, just as I already told you, that this proponents of using or including this HDA as a part of human development with modifications or greening it, okay, it constitutes the second indicator of welfare, that is the HDA created by United Nations or in a development program in 1990, as all of aware, and is a well-known global measure of human development, and it is composed of three variables, that is equally weighted variables: GDP per capita, life expectancy at birth, and the education level, that is measured by adulteracy rate and enrollment rates in education. So note that the validity of the HDA is an indicator of the human development, and the well-being is still criticized. Okay, as earlier we have noted that. So, and also we have noted from our human development related discussions in the literature. So though today from all the countries used human development, that is HDA as an indicator for human development. So because of its compass, because of its that is limitations, not including in all aspects of the human development, and hence it is criticized. Okay, the same is also holds good in this case, but we can treat in measuring sustainable development or sustainable well-being this as one of the method. So that, of course, as give both some are who are in favor of this human development and greening that human development are given as citations here, reference here. So in this context, such critics also apply the green HDA, just we have noted, and here green HDA to attempts of the incorporation of an ecological measure into the HDA. That is just the green HDA means along with that income, health and education related indicators, the ecological aspects are also included in measuring that green HDA. And indeed, since economic and social variables are included, an environmental measure is missing in the HDA to interpret it as a sustainable development indicators. That's why, so greening this HDA, they have included some ecological measures. So then it becomes green green human development indicator. Then the different methods of integrations are used. Again, of course, though that is the theory. The theory is that, so if you include this greening aspects in case of human development index, so that becomes one of the measure of sustainable development. But the opinions in greening this human development index is, of course, not unique or not similar among the methodologists. So they have different methods, and hence there are different methods of integrations are used. And of course, a study by that is United Nations, earlier I have told you that green extension of using some persons who are using some methodology, and that is also used in one of the country, that is France, that includes environmental variable by penalizing the income component of the HDA. That is, so the, in calculation and including that income in calculation of the HDA, that has to be penalized by incorporating environmental variable, as earlier I have told you that. For this purpose, they compute an environmental behavior indicator based on the CO2 emissions per capita and combined with the GDP per capita using the approach of Atkinson's inequality index. That is, the Atkinson inequality index has been used to calculate that are penalizing that income in case of HD. That is the methodology that has been proposed by one of the study in greening this HDI. Okay, and these are again the further measures of this, that is, whereas the other one, the same economics and social variables and composition of HDI is better human development in OECD countries. They include fourth equally weighted variable in their sustainable development, sustainable human development index composed of 3 measures of environmental quality, that is air, water and soil. That is in one of the method of greening this HDI, they are called as green HDI. So other one is called as sustainable human development index. In case of sustainable human development index, along with the earlier 3, income, education and health indicator, they have added one more indicator. That indicator is environmental indicator, which includes the quality of air, water and soil. These are the different methods which have been used in using the sustainable, that is the human development index, to measure the human well-being under sustainable aspect or sustainability. Okay, this is about the sustainable well-being, that is the methods to measure sustainable well-being. Okay, so I think now the time is nearer to 3:30. So since the same topic will be continued in the next session, okay, so we will better to stop at this point. So have a break for 15 minutes. We rejoin at 3:45, and since the topic, the same topic is for the 2 sessions, along with some trends in Indian context related analysis. Okay, if you have any questions, queries, so I will answer for your queries to best of my knowledge at the end of the next session. Thank you. We will meet in the next session at 3:45. Thank you.